My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are so excited to be here with all of you to celebrate Dykette, Jenny Fran Davis's brand new adult novel. Jenny received her MFA from the University of Iowa, where she was an Iowa Arts Fellow. She is also the author of Everything Must Go, a novel for teenagers, and she now lives in Brooklyn, New York. She's joined tonight by Anna Dorn, who is an author, editor, and writing teacher living in Los Angeles. Her writing is represented by Sarah Fair at Sanford J. Greenberger Associates for books and Hannah Vaughn at the Gersh Agency for Film and TV. Anna teaches writing classes at Write or Die and is an associate editor at Hobart Pulp. She was a Lambda Literary Fellow, and her second novel, Exalted, is a finalist for the LA Times Book Prize. And we will be dropping links to Exalted for folks, because I know after hearing Anna talk, you're going to want to read Exalted too. But the woman of the hour is Jenny Davis. We're so excited. This was a Charis staff pick for many of our employees. Like, this was a hotly desired galley. Many folks grabbed this book up. The title obviously eye-catching, and then once folks got into it, the humor and everything else, folks were really excited. So we're really glad to get to celebrate with you. Very glad for having folks watching from all over the country. Feel free to put stuff in the chat, say hello if you want to shout out where you're watching from. You can also ask questions at any time. You're also welcome to just sit back and enjoy. So thank you both so much for being with us, and let's get right into it.
Cool. Well, I'll just start off by saying I love this book so much, and I was really happy when Jenny asked me to do this event with her. Dykette is just kind of like the exact type of like twisted, sapphic, psychosexual romp I go crazy for. So I'll just let Jenny start off by reading some, and then we'll get into some questions.
Sounds good. Thank you, Anna. I'm so happy you agreed to do this with me. I love your writing, and I am very excited for our conversation. I know your questions will be hard-hitting. We'll really get to the bottom of some important things.
Yes,
so I'm just going to read a few passages. For context, this is where the characters in the novel, which sort of takes place over the course of about 10 days upstate, queer friend group travels together to one couple's estate outside of Hudson, New York. And a few of them are playing a casual game of soccer on an icy field near the house. Okay. In Sasha's experience, many Dykettes prided themselves on knowing nothing about soccer. Their bit was ignorance, charming innocence, the way they'd cock their heads and say points instead of goals, exaggeratedly unable to tell who was on what team, loudly ask what had happened when the stadium erupted in cheers. This naivete was, Sasha knew, out. Jules Todd had decreed it resolutely during her segment, the first time she talked to Sasha on the TV, when she was at the diner with Jesse. Being smart was in. Being attentive and sharp was in. Bimbo was okay, but you had to have a brain too. Pretending to be dumber than you actually were was worse than useless. It was embarrassing. The struggle of the Dykette for Sasha was that she wanted more than anything to be noticed, recognized. Not even as gay, really, just as pretty, or as literally anything, but it was also her biggest fear, being scrutinized. Attention was the mechanism through which she would be exposed. Exposed as what, she didn't really know. When a third-grade bully had taunted her, calling her a lesbian and saying that all lesbians were ugly, and so therefore, by the associative property, Sasha was ugly, her mother had hastened to reassure her that that wasn't true, that some lesbians were pretty, like, for example, her colleague Jean at the hospital. Sasha could be a pretty lesbian. But being a pretty lesbian was like being the woman in the image Jesse had shown her early in their courtship, the naked woman trying to wrap her arms around a big red butch cardinal. G, like Sasha, was afraid.
I relate to Sasha so much. Okay, cool. So I wanted to first just ask about the term Dykette, because I love it so much. I love that it like connotes femininity, whereas dyke tends to conjure more like masculine things like contact sports and like cargo pants or whatever, which can be very alienating for a femme lesbian. So I was hoping you could just talk about like whether you coined the term dykette and just sort of define it for those who are unfamiliar.
Yeah, that's a really interesting and good question. To the question of whether or not I coined the term, I'm not actually sure. Like I don't think I heard it anywhere. And to my knowledge, I'm like sort of I'm the originator, at least within myself. It's possible that people have used it before. I also think that like adding "et" to things is questionably like, you know, a practice that many, especially gay people, partake in. Like I've heard faggot, which I also love. But dykette, I think I would define as like a dyke that is decorated with frills and ribbons and ruffles. And I will also say that it's like, for me, less of like a strict identity category and more of like an attitude or an aesthetic. Like certain things are just so dykette, and that doesn't literally mean that like the person doing the thing is a dykette. Although if someone identifies that way, as Sasha, the protagonist of the novel, does, that's cool too. And yeah, I think of like the dykette sort of relationship as less like a strict binary and more just like two attitudes that many of us like move between pretty fluidly. And many of the characters in the book, I think, have moments where they're being like so dykey or so dykette.
What's like the most dykette thing that happened during your pub week?
During this pub week, oh my God, so many things. Honestly, probably when we were, I did my launch event at the Strand in New York City, and I was freaking out that we wouldn't have enough pink starbursts, which we wanted to arrange in a massive heart on the table where I would sign books. And I kept sort of insisting, like, we need more pink starbursts. We're not going to have enough. Like, this is a dire situation. Like, I almost my partner, like, go out and get more. We only had 5 pounds. So, you know, like, obviously that's basically nothing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think like the sort of like performative anxiety as like a container for many bigger anxieties about how I was going to be like seen or experienced, or the sort of like subjective experience that I wanted to create for my guests, like the sort of preoccupation and anxiety around the number of pink starbursts that would be at the event felt very dykette to me.
Yeah, a pink starburst crisis.
Yeah.
Dykette.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you sort of mentioned ribbons. I guess you mentioned frills, but I just want to talk about ribbons generally. So they're mentioned many, many times in Dykette. I think I control F'd it, and it's like ribbon. The word ribbon is in there like 61 times.
Sounds about right.
Always wears a bootleg green Chanel ribbon around her neck or in her hair. You told me when I interviewed you for Hobart that ribbons are very gay, and your answer was just really interesting and entertaining. So kind of go off on the subject on ribbons being gay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think what makes ribbons so gay to me on a certain level is that they're useless but insanely beautiful and like flamboyant, and they involve a sort of like experience of like unwrapping something, and you know, pulling on one part of a ribbon will sort of like change the entire shape of the piece of ribbon, like if it's tied in a bow, and it like slithers around, and it's just like it's so sort of tactilely satisfying, and there's something like just ineffably very gay about the experience of like untying a bow and having it just be like a slithering like ribbon in your hands. And I also think what feels so gay about ribbons is that they look like they're holding something together usually, but like it's not exactly what it seems. Like usually a ribbon is not quite essential to the task of like holding an object's wrapping on top of it, like if it's for a gift. And, you know, obviously I'm like obsessed with the story of the girl with the green ribbon around her neck, which is a huge part of the book. And the sort of like the mythology built up around this ribbon that's like holding the girl's head on her body. Like, how could a ribbon possibly do that? But also, we all believe when we read the story that it does. And at the end of the story, her head falls off. So
Which
yeah,
is camp antics, probably.
totally. Yeah, it's so high femme camp antics to be like, a ribbon is holding my head on, and you can't touch it, and if you pull it off, like, you'll kill me. Like, that is sort of peak Dykette.
Yes, love it. Cool. So that brings me to my next question, which is about you wrote a personal essay in 2020 for the LA Times Review of Books. It starts with you writing about your lesbian boyfriend's therapist telling her to watch out for Jenny's high femme camp antics. What a great therapist. Oh my God. So Dykette begins with Sasha overhearing Jesse's therapy session, and the article also discusses you inventing a game called Come Inside while recovering from an infected cyst, which is also something that Sasha recounts in Dykette. So I was just wondering if you could talk about that essay as maybe a starting point for Dykette.
Yeah, I think the essay was definitely a starting point in terms of like ideas that had been incubating in my mind for a while. And like certainly many of the ideas that like sort of began to get worked through in that essay appear in the novel. And I think like I used the novel as a sort of vehicle to like answer some of those questions that I feel like remained unanswered by the essay. But I think like more than that, it's really the persona that was like the birth of the persona that I was writing in for that essay was sort of like the birth of the persona of Sasha in the novel, who's like the protagonist whose mind we really like inhabit and spend the vast majority of the story with. So I think that writing in that sort of like voice or in that sort of mode was a major point of entry for me when beginning the novel, and sort of like thinking about how this character might interact with like a wider world, or might interact with like other sort of like performances of gender and identity, and other generations of queers, and other places and times and things. I started to get really interested in sort of how that mindset would grapple with an experience like like the 10 days upstate with the two other couples. So yeah, I think in terms of like voice and character, it was pretty pivotal for me.
Had you started writing the book when you wrote the essay?
I had the beginnings of it. It was actually initially like a nonfiction project.
Oh, interesting.
And then during COVID, a lot of the sort of like on the ground research that I had wanted to do for that nonfiction project like seemed like it wasn't going to happen, and then I took a trip upstate with some friends, and you know, things followed from there. But yeah, I definitely knew that I wanted to write a book about, on some level, like femme stuff and femme identity, and it turned out that fiction was the way that it all fell into place, but definitely ideas that I'd been thinking about for a while.
Cool. One thing I wanted to ask about, sort of related to that, is like since Sasha emerged from like this personal essay, and now you're saying like a nonfiction project, I was wondering about your decision to write her in third person, because I feel like third person's sort of uncommon these days, and it's also very chic and aspirational to be.
Thank you for saying it's chic.
How do you do it?
So I sold the book in first person. I initially wrote it in first person, and then I changed painstakingly every single instance of she or her, or sorry, every instance of I or me to she or her.
Wow.
And like, of course, that was only the first step. Like, the transition from first person to third person actually entails, in a lot of cases, like an entire rewriting of a scene, because like the way that a first person narrator experiences a scene is rarely how you want to write a third person sort of protagonist experiencing that scene. And like, because the narrator actually changes, like the point of telling changes when you change point of view in that way. So like suddenly there was this omniscient narrator who could, you know, if she wanted to, like jump around into all the different characters' heads. And a big part of why I decided to do that actually was because I was having trouble like sort of writing Sasha as a character in the world, rather than just like living so immediately in her mind that everything sort of took on like a distorted, weird texture that I felt was almost like intolerable to stay with over the course of a novel. And being in third person, I did feel like it was a little bit chicer in that way, where like I could keep a little bit of like coy distance, which is also so Dykette, to like for like this omniscient narrator to like sometimes be able to tell exactly what she's thinking or feeling, and sometimes for it to sometimes remain like opaque or like obscured even to the reader, who's like supposed to have access, I guess, to every like aspect of a protagonist's interiority. But I think what remained the same during that switch was that like it's Sasha's internal world that we're privy to, and no one else is really. We don't know what the other are thinking.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So your first book, we were talking about this briefly beforehand, but your first book was YA. So I was wondering, talk a little bit about your decision to start writing for adult audiences and what that transition has been like, and also if you think that you would write YA again, or are you done with that?
Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, because the experience of publishing a YA book and publishing an adult book have been different in a lot of ways. I think in large part because I wrote my first book as an undergrad in college. And so I was in my early 20s, like my very early 20s. And there was so much I didn't know. And I was also just experiencing like so much kind of like rapid like maturity and growth, and also just like a ton of anxiety because of stuff that was happening in my life at the time. But yeah, I think with the first book, I really like I didn't set out to like write a YA novel. I wrote from the perspective of a 17-year-old just because that was like the perspective that I had. Like I started the book, I think when I was 18 or 19. So in that way, I think that there is a very strong like through line in the sense that like I write from the perspective that I currently have. Like the protagonist of Dykette is 25, which is how old I was when I sort of was writing the meat of that book. And in terms of wanting to write YA again, I have actually been thinking about that, just because I've been reflecting on like how influential YA books were to the writing of Dykette. Like, I don't know if you read the Click books.
No, but I think we talked about Gossip Girl when I interviewed
oh my God,
you.
Gossip Girl was huge for me. I read Gossip Girl when I was way too young. I was in like fourth. And I was reading about absolutely wild shenanigans like among these Upper East Siders. And I was like soon to be a student at like a private all-girls school that really resembled Gossip Girl. But yeah, so many YA books I feel are so like so hilarious and original, and like the sort of like the sort of freedom, I guess, to get into like all of the like weird and messy parts of growing up, particularly like I guess like writing from the point of view of a teenager as an adult seems to actually like it actually feels very freeing at this point, like versus when I was writing my YA book and I was a YA. I didn't feel necessarily like freed by that. I felt like that was like the sort of rational thing to do. but now, like, firmly as an adult, I think it's like newly exciting to think about writing from the point of view of a teenager, and like really writing from the perspective of like not maybe not even a past self, but like as a totally different self. And the sort of possibilities there seem really exciting. I don't know that I ever will, but it's definitely something that I've like thought, I've thought would be really cool, and also would probably entail so much research, just because like teens' lives have changed so much.
Right.
When I was a teenager and now, so I would probably have to like go undercover as a teen girl or something, which would be really fun.
When you were a teen.
Yeah.
I feel like people like that kind of, but yeah, also like teen audiences, I feel like are kind of ideal in the sense that they're very like fanatic. Like I was fanatic about Gossip Girl in a way that I am not about. I mean, actually, no, I'm still a fangirl, but I think most people my age are not that fanatic about books. So
That's so true. Yeah, there, like when I was a teen girl, like Lacey Harrison, the author of the Click books, was visiting the Upper East Side Barnes and Noble, and my best friend and I appeared at her event with a list of possible titles for her. We had just generated for fun, like
for like her next book.
Were always so funny. They were like Sealed with a Diss, or like yeah, like kind of just fun like plays on words. I think the best one that I can remember is The Wizard of Bras. And she was like, maybe I'll use that one.
You can use it.
I know, and I'm like, but yeah, like just the sort of like dedication of teen readers is so amazing.
And I love the idea of like a series. Like you can have this, because I always get sad when I finish a book that I have to like leave those characters. So I feel like it would be cool to like the Gossip Girl. But I don't know if the Click books was it like the same characters in all of them?
It was, and certain books focused more or less on different characters, but it did follow the same like group of teens. The same clique.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. So we have to talk Darcy.
Yes.
And okay, so Darcy, you told me when I interviewed you, Darcy in the book is described as artsy elite, Slavic vibes, internet fame. You told me she's inspired by Red Scares, Sasha and Jesse. And then Jules is a butch primetime newscaster who it seems like is an obvious reference to Rachel Maddow. Not exactly. Or?
Oh yeah. I mean,
definitely
inspired by, yeah.
So I was hoping you could, just talk about your decision to reference like pop culture characters in your characters.
Yeah, I think like both of those characters do feel the most like pop culture references. The other characters feel like a sort of like conflation of like a lot of people I've known throughout my life, a lot of friends and like peers. But it is true that those two characters feel like almost too recognizable, and that I think that's like a line that I've been playing with, like especially Jules. Like of course the Rachel Maddow influence is hard to miss. And I was like obsessed with Rachel Maddow as a kid and a teen, and like she's obviously like a root for me in that way, where like where I feel like what she sort of like symbolizes is more important than who she actually is. Like obviously we've never met, so the sort of like story that I've built up about her, and also about like whoever Darcy might be, I feel like there are a few people that Darcy was sort of like drawn in the image of. But particularly with like Jules, I do feel that there's a way in which like basing a character around someone that like I personally have this whole mythology around was an interesting way to explore the way that like Sasha has always had a fascination with Jules Todd, this news anchor, and like what happens when they actually meet. And like that's where like the sort of imagination and like fiction of it all comes in. And I felt that like picking these like archetypes that I personally have like had a lot of like feelings and hangups and narrativizing around, and then sort of like imagining what would happen if I was actually trapped in a house for 10 days with those people, and how the myths would like immediately crumble, and what would be built in their place, and all of those things. It was like an interesting way to sort of get at some of those ideas, and like, and in that sense, you know, I made 90% of it up because I've never met either of those people. It's fun. It's fun to kind of like imagine how people might be on the internet or on the TV screen versus first thing in the morning when they come down for coffee.
Right.
And to think about.
And I think it's fun for the reader too, because like every reader has like that person that they would be sort of like desperate to be alone in a house with. So like some, you know, celebrity they've fantasized about. So there is always that like vicarious thrill for the reader to experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that Rachel Maddow has read your book? Did you send it to her?
I didn't send it to her. I don't know that I have any way to contact her. Okay. I think it would be like the biggest honor of my life if she wanted to read my book, and
I'd probably be really flattered.
I hope so. Yeah. I don't know that she reads anything but like, you know, political theory, but I die at the sort of idea that she might read Dykette.
Yeah. I feel like she might. She needs to mix it up with her reading choices.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, so I was thrilled to see A Zipper Mouth by Lori Weeks epigraph in the book. That's one of my favorite books. So I was wondering if Zipper Mouth was an inspiration, and just like generally what books or author. I know you talked about the click books, but other than that, like what books inspired Dykette?
So many. Yeah. Zipper Mouth is an amazing book and everyone should read it. Sort of in that vein, like the Eileen Miles, oeuvre, it was really inspiring to me too. Michelle T, all of those sort of like 80s, 90s, like superstars. But also like looking a little bit farther back, I was like really taken with like some of like the ethnographies and anthologies of like butch femme writing from like the 40s to 60s in Buffalo, New York. Like I can think of two like sort of compilations of writings and interviews from that time period, and I just like poured over those. I like was obsessed with them. And definitely like a lot of writing from like the 70s and 80s, also like Ruby Fruit Jungle and like Sherry Moraga, Alice Walker, and up to the present, really, there's like every year I feel like more and more amazing queer novels come out, and each one I think has like touched me and inspired me, or in the very least like made me feel like excited to keep writing and like free to keep writing. And yeah, I'm trying to think of like books that have had a particular influence. Definitely Andrea Lawler, Politics, the Form of Mortal Girl. Definitely Confessions of the Fox by Jordy Rosenberg, Takira Madden's memoir, Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls. A lot of books like in the past decade have been really, really inspiring. And, you know, some of those I encountered like in college, and then I've read them like 3 or 4 times since then. And each time I sort of get something new. I'm a big rereader. And yeah, those are the ones I can think of, and like each like had a big hand in sort of like the either like the attitude of Dykette, or the range of characters explored, or the sort of structure of the novel. Like, you know, all of those sort of like had like a real impact. Yeah, there are so many other books that I just like have read and enjoyed that probably just like built momentum around writing and like loving to write and read.
Yeah, it's always hard to come up with it off the top of your head.
You know.
Well, I guess this is sort of related, but I guess like, since, you know, this is a queer bookstore event, do you have any thoughts on sort of the current state of queer literature and where you see your writing is fitting within it, or what you hope to like maybe add to it?
Yeah, in terms of the current state of queer literature, I think I'm really excited and like heartened by the fact that there seems to be just so much more room for like complicated or messy or even like ambivalent depictions of queerness. And I think that is my my contribution with Dykette is sort of just offering like offering a cast of characters who are like contending with their queerness and also like a lot of other stuff. It's not just about being gay. It's not just about them. Like, and I also am really loving to see like how much more space is being created for like books to be about like like not just being gay, but also being like having multiple identities at the same time. I feel like your writing is becoming way more part of the mainstream, which like people have mixed feelings about, but it's also seeming to like attract a wider range of readers who might share like certain identities with the protagonists of these books, but also like find these books as like vehicles to open up like avenues of like curiosity and learning. I feel like those are really good things. And in another like maybe hopeful like addition or contribution that I feel like Dykette is making is like the sort of the joy and humor and sort of like deliciousness of like being gay. I don't know. I feel like I've been like talking a lot about this or like thinking a lot about it for a while because like something a lot of readers have pointed out is like our two of our like amazing canonical lesbian books are The Well of Loneliness and Stone Butch Blues. There's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of heaviness. Yeah, and like those are amazing books and I'm so grateful for them. And also I wanted to write a book that felt like that felt gossipy and full of like beauty and joy and laughter and like playfulness. I think I wanted this book to feel like dessert or like candy.
Yeah, I think I used the word delicious when I was reading about it. And I think it does often feel like gay men sort of get to have all the fun and like lesbians to be like really serious and like talk about So I like that this was a book where like lesbians were sort of given the freedom to like behave like gay men at Fire Island almost, like enjoy themselves and like be
in their own special way.
But in a more interesting way than no offense to gay men, but anyways. Also, if people have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I just have a few more, so don't be shy. I meant to ask this when I was asking about your influences, but I was wondering if you have any non-literary influences.
Really?
Or talk about Vanderpump.
Before we get to Vanderpump Rules, I do have some non-literary influences. Tracy Chapman, Katie Lang, like sort of like amazing like masked musicians, I feel have been really influential. Like I know lyrics are literature, but like when put with music, it's a really different experience. And certainly reality TV has been another huge influence, and also movies like Bound. Everyone should watch Bound if you haven't already. But in terms of like film, I think it's hard to compete with reality TV as an influence. I'm a lover of all sorts of like trashy shows that I just find so compelling and so full of like brilliant observations and like the most like astute sort of like instances of like humanity I feel like are on display with these shows.
Mhm.
And I know we both love Vanderpump Rules more than anything. Is it your number one? I can never remember.
I'm a housewives girl, but I love Vanderpump, and I feel like I was thinking about it today, but Housewives is like all high femme camp antics,
Absolutely.
and Vanderpump is too. I was thinking about like, I don't know if people watch the finale in the audience, but like when Sandoval was like hyperventilating, like crying against the window at Lisa's, that just felt very Dykette to me. I know he's a straight man, but it was very Dykette behavior. So so I feel like reality TV, is filled with high femme camp antics.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially Vanderpump, like, honestly, Tom Sandoval is at the heart of a lot of the Dykette behavior, which is maybe why he's in the pickle that he's in right now with Scandoval. You know, cheating on his partner of 10 years with Raquel. It's hard as people who have watched him over the past like 10 seasons, like really grow up, and then like for this major sort of like shock and setback, and like we're seeing all of the characters grapple with it, and we're seeing like the real sort of like fractures now within this like really tight-knit traumatized group of friends. But I also found that that Stassi displayed a ton of Dykette behavior, especially in the early seasons when she was sort of like flailing around a little bit more before she became
and before she had her exorcism.
Yeah, before her exorcism.
Yeah, pre-exorcism.
Yeah, when she was like clinging to like her queen bee title, and and sort of like getting betrayed again and again by these boyfriends who would just like without fail just act so awful to her. And Lala obviously is great Dykette representation. Stand some Dykette moments.
Like Jax getting Stassi tattooed on him after they broke up is very like to win her back. Like that feels lesbian to me. Like
totally.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I might need to get that Stassi tattoo at some point.
I see people in Watch What Happens Live who had the tattoo.
Oh my god, I still need to watch that.
Yeah.
Also like a lot of moments between Tom and Ariana at the beginning of their relationship, I felt were very like that sort of like Dykette dynamic on display, like when she's begging him not to go to a birthday party because it's the anniversary of her dad's passing. She's really emotional about it, and then Tom Sandoval is like, I totally hear you, like that's so valid. They did say that we'd be able to like move rocks around with the big machine at this birthday party, like sort of like presents this like this sort of like super serious like plea to still get to go like do his like little boy fantasy of like some sort of construction birthday party. That seemed like spot on to me in some way that maybe like I haven't yet articulated. But yeah, there's like a sort of like hilariousness to like the gender dynamics in Vanderpump.
And I think they all do go back and forth between Dyke and Dykette, like all the characters. Like Lisa has some Dykette moments and some Dyke moments. I mean, some of her outfits.
Absolutely.
She loves a tie. Okay, we have some questions from the audience. Okay, question 1. Can you talk to us about styling the Dykette photo shoot?
Oh, that's a great question. So styling the Dykette photo shoot, my friend Alice, like was such an angel and like a little underemployed at the moment. And she took it upon herself to airbrush. She has a studio. She's like an amazing airbrusher. So we airbrushed all of these clothes, and we it was raining that the day that we decided. I like wrangled all the models. It was set to rain at noon, so I made everyone come over at 9 a.m. and sort of like because of, I think, the tight timeline, like all hell broke loose immediately, like cake being shoved in faces. Tess, my partner, had like set up this huge table with like a big airbrush cake that Alice, of course, like toxically airbrushed, and strawberries and cookies, and it was sort of just a free for all. And then the rain started, and that's where things kind of really took off. And a lot of the pictures that resulted were like, you know, like wet frosting like smeared across someone's face, or like a Dior heel like going into the mud, like very Dykette behavior.
Yeah, it's
Thank you for
editorial.
asking that.
Yeah, that look is always great. Okay, which character from Dykette would you most want to be trapped in the woods with, and why?
Such a good question. I'm gonna say, oh, that's so hard. I think Miranda, because Miranda seems to have very like practical survival skills. You know, like she worked on an archaeology dig. She's the one who like ends up finding Darcy's phone. And she sort of has like a quiet, like can-do attitude about her that I feel she's
Okay, I would be good in the woods.
low femme, like no nonsense type of person that I feel like would just immediately like start building a fire and be like, you know, telling me what to do, and I would be like screaming and like picking my little twigs.
Yeah, Miranda would be, yeah, that's not who I thought you were gonna pick, but it makes sense.
Who would you pick?
Probably Darcy. Just for fun. I mean, we would die.
Yeah, you would.
Right? But we would have a lot of fun for.
Yeah, you'd probably die within a few hours of like,
Yeah,
you know, frostbite and starvation, but you would have a good time. So
we would do like a good photo shoot beforehand.
absolutely.
Okay, I just thought of a question. Oh no, wait, we do have another question, but I thought of a question first. It's very Watch What Happens Live. Okay, fuck, marry, kill. This is for you, not Sasha. This is like for you, not. Actually, you can answer it for both you and Sasha.
Okay.
Okay, Miranda, Jules, Darcy. I feel like Jesse's too obvious, so.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I would fuck Jules, marry Miranda, kill Darcy. Because at the end of the day, I'm a Sasha. And I believe Sasha would have the same answer.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would probably marry Miranda and fuck Darcy. Yeah.
Kill Jules.
Jules is out.
Yeah. You have no use for Jules.
No, not with me. We would have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, another audience question. Did you read any pulp books while working on Dykette?
Now that's a great question. I wish I had read more. I read a little bit. And I have like an anthology of lesbian pulp fiction that I am like always meaning to read more of, and sometimes I flip through, and it's more like just like when my brain needs something to sort of like snack on, I'll flip through it, and it has been like a really like good source of like kind of like, I don't know like what it's actually doing in my mind when I read it. Maybe it's just like this sort of like aesthetic fun of pulp that I feel like has been inspiring. And also like the way that it takes so long for things to happen in pulp often, I think has been inspiring. Like I'm usually when I'm writing, I'm like so like worried about like pleasing the reader that I'm like, I need like everything, like every page has to have like something good on it. And like I think pulp has been really like instructive in terms of like making the reader wait and then having the anticipation build and then the payoff of like getting a reward. I imagine you're reading a lot of pulp right now.
Sort of. Some, yeah. I hadn't thought of that. Taking a while to like have things happen. It feels a little bit like female to like being like slow to warm, which I hadn't thought of it that way, but I like that. Wait, I thought of another question. Yeah, because we don't have any other audience questions, so I'm just coming up with some. Wait, what was the one I was gonna ask? Oh yeah, what's like a queer novel that you would like that you're not gonna write, but that you want someone else to write that you like are desperate to read?
That's such a good question. I would love like I don't know, so many queer novels. I feel like I'm not like the person to write it because the perspective is so sort of unknown or unfamiliar to me. Like I would love like to read more like T for T books. I would love to read books where the protagonist is like super butch. I would love to read a book where a protagonist is like maybe like having like a religious experience or like some sort of like spiritual queer book. I feel like would be really interesting.
That would be cool.
I definitely want to like read books about gay people like in jobs that I've like never had, because I love to like read books and learn about like other people's jobs. Like what about like a like what if they were like sailors or like merchants or something. Like I'm so interested in that. Like, and I will never have that experience.
But that would be cool. Yeah, like a lesbian sailor book.
I want to read like more like lesbian sports books, like that really get into the dynamics of like teammates.
Yeah, book could be fun.
Yeah. Also like historical stuff, like maybe like a novel, like a novel that has like elements of like contemporary queer culture, but also moves through like a really distant past time, like ancient Rome, or like the Harlem Renaissance, or like 1700s England or something like that. That sounds really interesting to me. Yeah, so many. We just need so many, because it feels like that'll sort of like each time we get a queer book that like doesn't try to do absolutely everything and sort of just like revel in like specificity and just showing like a slice of queer life, I feel like that opens up so many more opportunities for like other people to do the same, and then we'll have like just such an amazing wide range of like queer books that like tell all sorts of stories, and the pressure on one book will just be so much more reasonable.
Yeah, totally. It does feel like there's a lot more freedom now to like write a gay or queer book that isn't like about feeling oppressed or about overcoming the struggles of coming out or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most Dykette book of classic literature?
Oh my God. That's such a good question. Okay. Of classic literature, like we're talking like,
you can define it as, you know, the definition's up to you.
Okay. I mean, my first instinct is to say like Edith Wharton. Her protagonists are just so Dykette, but also maybe Jean Rhys. Have you read any Jean Rhys?
Yeah, that's like sad Dykette.
Yeah, that's like depressed Dykette, and maybe Edith Wharton is more like giddy Dykette. But also,
I guess Good Morning Midnight. Yeah, I guess Jean Rhys I'm seeing now, because she's just kind of like flitting around, like drinking.
And like she's always like manipulating men into like doing stuff for her, and like but it's also very sad because like she never quite comes out on top. Or her protagonist never quite prevail at the end of the day. Honestly, Jane Eyre, Bertha in the Attic is so Dykette.
Yes. Yeah.
And I haven't read Emma in a while, but something tells me that there's some Dykette stuff happening there.
Helps me, yeah. I don't think I've ever read it. Is that what actually never mind. I've never read Emma. But I'm sure it's Dykette. It sounds
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah. There are some antics in like Shakespeare too, I think. Like,
oh, yeah.
You know, Midsummer Night's Dream.
I was gonna say, yeah. That's a bunch of fairies running around.
Yeah. Totally.
Very Dykette, for sure. All right. Any other audience questions? Is there anything else that you want to touch on that I didn't touch on?
I don't think so. I feel like you're very thorough. I feel good.
Okay, cool. Should we hand it back to ER?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Coming back. Thank you all both so much. This is so fun. I want, if you don't own Dykette yet, you can click this teal button at the bottom of your screen to buy it from Charis. It really does help us when you buy your event books from us. You can also buy Anna's book, Exalted, from Charis. Anna, do you want to give the like 1 or 2 sentence pitch about Exalted for folks who don't know? Because it is in many ways a complimentary book, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty Dykette, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about a cynical internet astrologer who starts stalking someone based on their birth chart, and it ends tragically.
So
I'll just
so folks, I think if you already have bought Dykette and you are looking for additional reads, consider Exalted or Vagabond as well, which is your previous book. So I'm gonna drop those in the chat. And again, thanks so much for being with us, Jenny. I hope the rest of your tour is really fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being with us, and I hope that you both stay safe and well, and we'll get to host you in Atlanta sometime.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
You too. Thank you.